Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Young Justice, which we'll be getting into right now. I'm Andy Potter, and today I'm joined by Beatriz Mourad.
Hello.
And Jeff Anderson.
Howdy.
So today we're going to be talking about the season premiere of Young Justice Outsiders. But before we get into that, you can find everything about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. And you can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes or on YouTube or whatever podcatcher you use. And also before we get into it, I want to let everyone listening know that this is going to be an explicit podcast. We're going to curse. We're going to say bad words. We're going to, not because the show itself has curse words in it, but because it has a lot of dark themes in it. And I think this matches how the show feels. So if you're still on the fence about listening to this or watching the show, just know the show does not have curse words in it, but it is a very dark show. Anyways, with that said, let's just get right into this. Beatriz, what were your reactions to the show? This was a crazy fucking, crazy premiere.
Oh, I missed Young Justice. I missed it so much. And it didn't really hit me how much until I started watching it. And, I mean, granted, this is taking a lot more liberties and it's going a lot darker and a lot more graphic in its violence than, say, it did when it was on Cartoon Network. But even so, it still is Young Justice. It still feels like Young Justice, and I missed it so much. And it just kind of continues on and doesn't feel like 6 years had passed since season 2, which is what I wanted. I just wanted the transition to be seamless, and it was. And, Batwoman. Batwoman made a cameo. There she was, and it was beautiful. She appeared in 5 minutes, 54 seconds or something, and it was glorious, and I screamed, and it was wonderful.
She didn't even talk. Beatriz, she didn't even talk.
I don't care. It's Batwoman. And I don't know, maybe she'll appear more. Who knows? Because, the characters, they're kind of, it's called Young Justice, but doesn't even feel like, even though they're part of the Justice League, basically.
The main characters are pretty much adults at this point. So
basically, yeah. So
it's interesting.
So it's basically just Justice League, but they're keeping the branding for the sake of the history of the show. But so who knows? Maybe she will show up. You know?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, we have 23 more episodes to go. There's a lot we can cover here.
Yeah. So
Jeff, what were your reactions to this premiere?
I was very excited with the content. Like Beatriz, it's been a while. It didn't feel like 6 years. Wow, they really pulled that off. However, I'm comparing so you're familiar with the Suicide Squad. There's been a live action adaptation, but there's also an animated movie that I watched some time ago. And while I enjoyed the action sequences and seeing all the characters in that universe, after I watched it, I didn't really feel very good about myself. I mean, there wasn't very many morally redeeming qualities of that movie, which is a big surprise. And I'm feeling the same way about these episodes here. They're very dark, which I know we'll get into. It's missing a lot of the humor elements and just some of the positive qualities and attributes of the old show. So I really hope we get back to that, but we'll see.
It's interesting you say that because I watched the final episode of season 2 just as a refresher leading up to it. And if you do that, the tone seems the same because that final episode was so heavy. But I'm assuming if you go back to and you watch the first episode of the show, then obviously there is going to be a shift in terms of humor and the presence of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And even the second to last episode of season 2, I think has, the defeat of the light and all that stuff. And there's some good story hits there.
Yeah, this kind of just jumps right off from where we were in the end of season 2, but just keeps that dark tone like you were saying, Beatriz. And I agree with Jeff a little bit here that the dark tone is a little bit off-putting at times. It's not that it's bad, it's a very drastic shift from some of the things we've seen before. There are some moments in these episodes that are really, really intense in a surprising way. But that said, I do echo the fact that this just hits the ground running. This is Young Justice. I've really been missing the show for 6 years. And I don't know. It is, I think these are still 3 really good episodes, despite how dark they are and how kind of different tonally they are. So, I think that this is a good
really
time.
hope that I hope that they're not dark for darkness' sake.
Yeah, it's hard to tell at times. I think we can just jump right into that now. Like, I think that's the biggest talking point of these 3 episodes, just how dark they are, because there are multiple people killed on screen, multiple people shot by bullets. There's one girl who gets literally brained by a flame monster, and like her skull is revealed. Like, even though she comes back to life, that is still a shocking image to see. I'm pretty sure she's a child, right? Like, she's not an adult, but I'm not 100% sure. But that is a really brutal shot, and they could not have aired that on television, I don't think. Like, half the stuff they did. Like, while keeping the rating they wanted. And I don't know, like, were you guys really stunned that they killed, like, multiple children on screen in these episodes? Because that was pretty stunning to me.
Yeah.
Like, Beatrice, were you prepared for that? Multiple children dying?
No, I wasn't. And I mean, if you take like the first child, right? I think her name's what? Anna?
Anna, and the other guy is Plasmus. I forget his.
But
yeah, Otto.
Otto is her brother,
yeah.
Otto. But Anna, you know, when that happened, like in my head, I'm thinking, even though it's like a child, like, and it was very grave what happened, visually, it wasn't that graphic, even though it's still a child. So I was like, oh, maybe this is how they're gonna skirt away from like still doing dark, but visually it's not 100% there. But then what happened with, I don't know if we ever found out her name.
No, we don't. She's just called Halo Girl on the wiki and Dead Girl on the wiki. So we're gonna call her Halo here because Halo is an actual hero. So we're gonna assume that that's who she is.
Okay. Well, Halo, she, like, I think it's shocking in kind of the sense, like, for me, that was very reminiscent of Indiana Jones, you know, when they had that shot of that, like, Nazi guy, like, becoming, like, a skull. Like, that's what it was reminiscent of to me, where it's, like, it's not necessarily bloody, but it is gory. And and because, like, for most of the movie, it's still, like, it was, how do I explain it? It still was, kids could still see it. Like, it's not so gory that kids couldn't see it, but also, it's still scarring to a child. And
yes.
I mean, and if you think about who it is a child, not a Nazi that's being suffered in the way it was shown. I mean, yeah, it was surprising. But to me, the things that were mature about this weren't even necessarily like the killing. I mean, I think personally, like, the assassination of the parents was the goriest thing.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, aside from the melting of the face. But, personally, I think what was so shocking and mature about the show and what was so dark was the fact that we are seeing basically, like, the show's version of Fox News and the show's version of Piers Morgan, who was there in the second season, but, like, given how in our world, like, they exist, like, it's much more present now than before, than 6 years ago. 6 years ago was a different world that we lived in. And, like, it just kind of I don't know, I just felt this kind of very heavy kind of darkness in there that isn't even necessarily because of the show itself, but because of what the world that we're living in and the parallels they're making with immigration, with refugees, with what they're saying, like, with military intervention, like, all this stuff. It just, like, you know, discrimination and racism and all that. I mean child trafficking. That's off the bat we're getting. So
I think what you're getting at here is that the context is what matters with this show. Like, there's, like, a lot of the individual things that happen aren't as dark as they could be, but then you add the context of, like, the characters, how they're feeling about things, the context of, like, how the news media is portrayed, like, then it gets a lot darker. Because, like, we have Black Lightning. Like, I think a lot of the kids dying wouldn't have been as impactful if we didn't see through the eyes of Black Lightning. Like, he is remorseful. He realizes how big a deal this is. Like, we see it at multiple instances. Like, he almost can't bring himself to walk into a children's hospital morgue because of his trauma. And I think that's what makes the darkness so visceral because of these moments. Jeff, you haven't jumped in here a lot. Like, was there any part of this darkness that really, like, jumped out at you as, like, being too much, or, like, because you seem to be a little hesitant about some of this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, all the gore, you know, is bordering on gratuitous, I think. Like, it doesn't need to be that way. in order to be a good show. So this gets back to like, let's not be gory for goriness' sake, or just the fact that, oh, it was not on TV, so we can be gory, so let's do that. Let's have a moral compass here.
I don't think they're being good. I mean, if they were being gratuitous for gratuitous sake, they would be like that Suicide Squad animated movie.
And I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I'm just hoping that they don't go that direction.
I get what you're saying, Jeff, because it's like this is the first step past being on TV. So if this is what they start with, is this a sign of like how they're going to be going and stepping up from here? Like, is it going to become something that's much more gory as we approach the finale? Is what that's what I was fearing, at least when I was watching this, because this is the beginning. This is our hook for the show. If this is just the gore we're getting now, like the shot of the king and the queen in their bed bloody, like that was actually probably the actual goriest shot of the movie, of the premiere, because there's just two people covered in blood and stab wounds on a bed holding hands together. Like, that is not a thing you'd expect to see in a show like this normally. Like, that is pretty far off the deep end in terms of gore for a superhero show.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if there's anything else really to say here besides it's something to keep watch of as we progress through the season, because it's I think more than anything, I'm just interested in this shift. Not really like, maybe not worried yet, but I can see where you're coming from, Jeff, where I can see a viewer being worried that this would get worse. Like,
I'm also, from a total selfish point of view, I'd like to have people to watch this show with, and this is very curtailed the audience with which I can share this now.
Oh, that is a good point, because some people just can't stomach this kind of stuff. Not just the gore, but also these tough topics. Like, there are tough topics that are cool to watch or interesting to watch, but this is really, really tough stuff. Like, human trafficking is a real world thing. Like, this is not like some strange alien invasion like last season. This is a real life thing that's being added with a superhero element to it. And that can be tough to watch for people. Like, that is really tough. And so, I think with that said, I think we can start and hit on a couple of big notes through the plot and maybe just talk about that instead of just going a big view of the darkness stuff. Before I get into anything, were there any, let's just go into it actually. Let's just start with the recap. The first episode, Prince is All, it started with the, recap, like the end of season 2, but we immediately jumped into the present with Black Lightning killing the girl, like we said. But I think the more interesting scene here is all the references. So we're gonna get you a chance to talk about Batwoman again here, Beatriz. Because we get this shot on the Watchtower where we get pretty much not a recap of the last 2 years, but a kind of just a hint at how things have changed. Because a lot of things have changed since season 2. And it's really interesting, actually, all the changes they've done, because I know a lot of the comic stuff that's happening here, but I have no idea what's actually coming up. I know you two, Jeff and Beatriz, you guys have at least some understanding. I'm not sure exactly your full knowledge of DC comics, but I know you guys have some. And like, where were your minds going, Jeff? Was your mind worrying into places when you were seeing these characters show up in the way they were showing up?
So, it's funny, I've seen a few of the more recent animated, DC, like movies featuring like Batman, Wonder Woman. So their new costumes were not a surprise to me, but I was a bit disappointed. I guess I far prefer Batman's appearance and voice from Young Justice season 2 and 1 than what he showed up now, where it's clear that they're taking cues from what's been going on in the animated universe so far recently. Other thing, like, I was not a fan of, basically, Prince is All, the first episode should have been 2 episodes, I think. They crammed way too much stuff in there.
I agree. It was a very long episode.
Yeah. I mean, like, the proposal, for Superboy, like, no lead up. Okay, so the whole human trafficking thing, they really should have done, the whole show don't tell, guidance. Well, they really just told us in this meeting with the Justice League, like, here's the state of the world. They really should have had, half an episode to establish that the Justice League is being hamstrung and more than one child is being abducted. It's a pandemic. We never really got that context.
I think partially they did this because it has been 6 years, so I think they kind of didn't want to lose their audience in some ways, because a lot of people kind of might have forgotten where the state of the world is. And so this felt kind of necessary to me, but it does feel very ham-fisted, I agree. Because there's these people, they're just the heroes sitting there conveniently talking about all the important changes that have happened to the world in the last 2 years, just happening to happen right now on screen.
It's the whole model, like everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, well, that's the thing, though. To be fair, though, I think they did the best they could with that, because it wasn't that conversation, and that wasn't used just simply as exposition. It was used to show the conflict within the Justice League, and it was used to show the fallout of the Justice League. So it did do some character work, despite it doing what you say, which was more telling than showing. And, we have to understand that 2 years had passed. So even though we have just seen we had come off of season 2, and we know what the world is going on at the moment, 2 years have passed where we don't know what's happening. And we just left with Lex Luthor becoming, Secretary General of the UN or something?
Yes, correct.
Is that the title? So we're finding out what's going on with him. We needed if we're going to do a time jump, we needed some sort of information to not have us disoriented and not to let us be completely lost. So, I mean, if we had a character, for instance, I'm going to make reference to Star Wars because it's me. So of course I am. So if we had a character like Luke, who doesn't really necessarily know what's happening in the world, and he's kind of an ingenue, or if we had someone like Harry Potter when he's just starting out and exploring the wizarding world, then we can do a lot more showing than telling. But we are dropping in season 3 after a time jump with characters who do know what's happening, but we as the audience don't. So there's no other way to do this. So I just think you guys are being a little too hard with that.
I get it, Beatriz, and I'm not exactly I don't know if I'm being hard, maybe I was a little rough with my language, but I just mean that I think they could have done other things, but I think this is the simplest way to do it, and I'm kind of just prefer it. They could have done news clips, they could have done a montage or something, but I just think this is the quickest way to do it, and that's okay that it's a little ham-fisted at times, but I think it's the right way to go for this type of show.
So, if they had episode 1, half the episodes taken up with, there's a tsunami in Malaysia or whatever, and Justice League wants to move in, but then we actually experience the whole hamstringness, the red tape. If they actually allowed us to see that firsthand rather than just being told that's what's been going on, I'd feel a lot more empathy for these Justice Leaguers who are leaving as it is. And wait, they're leaving? Wait, what? I'm not sure that they tell me they're disappointed, but I don't feel that.
I honestly think, Jeff, and I agree, I felt the same way. I think that might be what the show's trying to do. I think the show might be wanting us to feel hey, why are these guys leaving? This is crazy.
If that's what they're going for, fair. It's weird. Okay.
But I agree, though, that it would have been nice to see that they were being disenfranchised.
I will say, though, wasn't season 2, didn't they have experienced some disenfranchisement in season 2? Wasn't there always tension between the Justice League and the UN, though?
There was.
So I'm just saying also, we have to remember it's been 6 years, so maybe we're not as fresh with season 2, but this has also been a theme that's been happening for a bit of time.
I think, though, that most of the stuff with the UN, the issue was more that there were specific heroes that people were questioning, and that there were also they were questioning the use of the younger heroes because they were a secret force, and that was most of the. I think if I remember correctly, that was most of the tension. But now it feels like there's been some further steps, they can't just be heroes anymore. So I'm interested to see more of what we do, because later episodes of this episode, in this premiere, it comes off it's almost like the Sokovia Accords from Civil War.
Right, yeah.
And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. And it's interesting to me to see if we'll continue on with that, because I think we will, but it'll be interesting to see how we do that. I don't think we're going to go full Civil War, they're going to be heroes fighting each other, which is good, but I am going to be interested in what we do. With that said, I want to, just before we move on from here, Beatriz, what do you want to say about Batwoman?
Oh, I mean, I said it in the beginning.
Do you have more? We're here now.
No, well, I do actually have more, though. What I like, not about Batwoman in particular, but a little bit about Bat Family. In the 2 years, I mean, the thing that for me, what worried me was, I don't know if they want to I don't think they're making the DC animated universe and Young Justice part of the same canon. I don't think, even though there's some costume influences, but, the fact that Oracle's a thing now, meaning the Killing Joke thing happened, I just want to know the timeline, because last time we checked, Batgirl was still Batgirl. So it's okay, hold on. And I adore her journey as Oracle, and I'm still getting used to the fact that she's Batgirl again. But, or at least in the comics. But yeah, so I'm just like really hope to get, I mean, if she's Oracle, I don't want to get a flashback. I don't want to see the Killing Joke again. I don't need it. And I'm trying to erase the animated film of the Killing Joke from my mind because that was unnecessary. But yeah, so I'm just excited to see like what, like I just don't want them to just have like, oh, like Oracle, we're not going to mention like that it's Barbara Gordon or that just happened. We're just not going to mention how like Batwoman's just there. I actually want them to, I mean, Batwoman, it's fine if it's just a cameo, but especially with someone like Barbara who was there in season 2 and was a character, I don't want them to just leave her as Oracle without some form of exploration of her character.
I agree. I really was. Oracle is probably one of the things I was most excited about, just like hearing him in the background a couple times. It's interesting that like they're kind of taking a very, like now that they're not on TV, I think this might be part of it too, they're really playing fast and loose with references. They're just like, they're throwing all kinds of stuff at us. They're throwing Oracle at us. They're throwing all kinds of really obscure heroes at us in this meeting with the Justice League that don't even have voicing roles here. And it's just, they're fine with that. And I'm okay with that to a point, but we need to realize that the thing that was good about this show was the characters. Like, I liked the characters, these iterations of them. And so I'd be worried if they just go a little too far with the references, but right now it's fine. This is good. This is fun. But I think you guys missed the two biggest things of this meeting, which are, one, Superman's apparently not part of the Justice League right now. He is gone.
I mean, he is. He's in space, though. He's the Justice League, but going in space right now with Wonder Woman.
He's gone right now, though. He wasn't part of this meeting. Like, he wasn't part of this leadership meeting at all.
Right.
He's just kind of on his own thing right now, and so that's interesting.
But that's the thing, he's not on his own thing, he's with Wonder Woman.
But I mean, like, he's not involved with this leadership meeting, which I find interesting. Like, he's not doing any of the leading, which is a little bit different than the Superman we've seen before in these kinds of shows, which I think lines up pretty well with what we've seen of him in the past of this show, like, of this, in the past seasons. Like, he's not really he isn't as charismatic as we're used to, which is an interesting twist on him. He's still the same paragon of good, he's just a little bit less charismatic. But then the more interesting thing here is that Aqualad is now Aquaman.
Yeah, what happened to Aquaman?
Yeah, this is a crazy change for me in that Aqualad is one of the best characters on the show. His voice actor is incredible, and he is just really interesting to me, and he had probably the most interesting arc in season 2, and now he's just kind of pushed above the rest of our cast, and I think that was almost a move so that we don't have to, he can be written out as a solution to a lot of the problems with our cast, because he did a lot of times save everybody else, because he is both powerful and cool-headed at times, when it's more interesting if the characters aren't cool-headed all the times. And so I think this is a good move to move him out of our main cast, but still be close enough that he can interact with them. And so this is really interesting. Obviously we need to know where other Aquaman went, but I think that it doesn't seem like there's any more tragic stuff happening, but we'll see. And
I'm just worried though that it's going to be another Cyborg situation.
Yeah.
Where they move him to the Justice League versus Teen Titans, and then it's like completely loses the magic, and he feels awkward within the Justice League. So that's my biggest concern with Aqualad turning into Aquaman, which is like, can they make that transition and still, like, obviously he won't be there as often, but still make the character suffer. Like, and also the question, like, I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah. There's a lot going on here, but let's just move on. We've got a lot to cover. A lot of ground to cover. We're still in the first, 10 minutes of episode 1. This episode is just so long. Like, the next 2 episodes, honestly, are much shorter to talk about, but this one is just, there's just too much happening in it. Like, going through the outline here, Jeff, I more agree with you, because this episode is just, there's too much here. They could have cut down a little bit on this, because we still have, in this episode, Dick going to Moscow. He talks to everybody. He fights the metahuman traffickers. We find out about Oracle. We get the King and Queen of Markovia. Markovia get assassinated, and they also have a meeting with the press. We also find out about Prince Brion. We find out about Terra. We find out about Dick meeting up with 3 other heroes to get them to join him. And that's all at the same episode. This is probably one of the most fast-paced, episode 1 premieres ever. It's just insane. And and for some reason they had the gall to add a 30-second section that was to a previous season. Of all the episodes to add 30 seconds from a previous episode, this one seems like the worst option. There's just so much going on here. And
so like for example, like Black Lightning, when he gets recruited, like he goes the whole like, oh, I won't go. Don't even ask me, and everyone knows, okay, he's going to show up, right? After some time of reflection, right? But they did it in the very next scene, which is like, no, that the trope doesn't work if you just fast forward like that. You need time to,
you need time for let it sit. And I think it honestly would have been enough if they just like skipped the next episode and then had this scene. Like just separate it by like a credit scene and an opening. And I think it would be fine. But just having it be like 2 seconds later, it just feels like, oh, okay, I guess we're just gonna not even pretend. We're just gonna go straight to this. It was really fast, I agree. But that's this whole episode. Oh yeah, and also we have Superboy proposing to Miss Martian in this episode. Out of nowhere.
Which really could have been saved for later in the series to have more emotional impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this relationship. Miss Martian and Superboy, they feel very good together. But again, this is like crazy fast what we're doing. Also, before we move on to the next episode, because there's more here, but like I think we talked about most of the interesting stuff here. But Miss Martian she's white. Like she has white skin. Like a white Martian in the beginning of this Watchtower scene, which I think is interesting. There's some more character development there happening in the background for Megan. And
Didn't we always know that she was white Martian though?
Yes, that happened in season 1. Like she revealed it to everybody. And no,
so like, yeah, so I kind of like that. I kind of like how like we don't have to go through the whole like, oh, now I've like come to my own and now I'm comfortable enough to be who I really am. Like I feel like that it's fine. I think, especially because she kind of had that sort of thing when we find out who like her actual face belonged to. Like, I think it was a smart decision to just kind of, in the 2 years, she became comfortable with her own skin and just.
Yeah.
Well, not entirely. I mean, she's still metamorphosing to look human-like. It's not her real form, right?
Yeah.
Right.
She turns into her real form a couple times in season 2 to fight, but otherwise she stays in her human-like form to fight.
So I'm wondering if on Mars, if adult females don't have hair there either, if that's why she's presenting as bald when she's in Martian form.
I guess that might be like, I mean, her Ja'an doesn't have hair either. Like, I assume maybe no Martians have hair.
Yeah.
But I think the most interesting, I agree with you, Beatrice. Like, if she was the main character of a show of her own, like, this is stuff I'd want to be on screen. Like, I'd want to see it. But as a member of an ensemble cast like this, like, there's just not time to have like an entire arc for her anymore, unfortunately, to see her growth. So I think this is fine thing to happen in the background. Like, we recognize there's growth there, and we're just moving on forward with the plot. I guess now we can just move on to the next episode, because it's much, much shorter in terms of summaries. I really wanted to talk about these Beast Boy scenes now, I guess. This would be the best time, because there's something funky going on with Beast Boy on this TV show. Would Jeff, do you feel a little weirded out by this whole sequence with him having a commercial for a show?
A little bit. I mean, I don't really know what they're going for, but yeah, it's sort of okay. It's cool. Why not?
Yeah, but then like even then, like what I mean is that this thing he says to everybody on this commercial is like, if you see something, scream something. It's a little bit creepy. It's not really. If they're going for like a real like wholesome like commercial thing, it feels a little creepy and forced.
Yeah, it feels like on the nose a little bit. Like say something. I get it.
And we never see Beast Boy anywhere else besides these 2 commercials we get in these episodes. To me, I feel like there's more going on here than we're seeing. And Beatrice, did you feel that way at all about these, or did you just take them at face value?
I mean, I feel like these were the moments of like humor at times, because like for instance, like I don't know, like for instance that shot of like kind of doing a spoof of The More You Know.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like, I mean, I think that was just like, part of it was a weird attempt at humor that didn't necessarily work, especially with everything that was happening. And I'm not familiar with Beast Boy's journey and history in the comics, but I'm like, really? Like it makes sense that he'd go into acting since his mom was one, but
yeah.
Also, like, I mean, I guess, but I'm always also never really 100% huge fan of like when they kind of basically when they use queer language to describe like kind of being like, oh, like I'm the only openly meta-human. And I'm just like, if you're gonna use queer themes, give us queer characters as well.
Yeah.
Don't just use the themes, also give us queer characters, is all I say.
Yeah, and I think that gets on to something that I want to talk about maybe as we end, but this is still a very straight show. There's no real queer representation in this show at all, at least yet. So, but I think we'll get into that as maybe like an ending topic, but right now I just want to get through this, Beatriz, because there's a lot to get through. But I guess another thing I want to talk about is just there is the children's hospital in this episode is very, very dark. Just the idea that people are taking kids who are terminally ill and doing experiments on them for trafficking is a very dark idea. And we talked about it at the beginning, but I just want to, this feels like the whole set piece here feels like something that we could not even do in the show at all. Like just the set piece itself. And I think this type of thing is a good thing that comes from the way they're using dark elements. Like we couldn't have a children's hospital set piece with dead children around. Like, did you feel, Beatriz, or Jeff, did you feel like this part of it was a little better? Like the idea that we can have sets like this happen in the show now?
Yeah. This is, and the whole like mature themes like human trafficking, I have no issues with like, bringing that to the forefront and actually having shows that touch on those things. I think that's really good. I will note that the opening scene of the morgue when they're exploring it and they have like the operating tables, that really actually reminded me of a tour I went on at the concentration camp and saw the medical facilities there. It was interesting parallel for me, at least. I mean,
yes. I think honestly, I think that's a good comparison because it does at times look very not clinical. Like it does look clinical as the clinic, but I mean, it does look like the lighting of it makes it look very dark. It looks very evil and not good. And I think that's a good comparison, actually. And then we get to the underground section with the actual kids in the tubes, which is also pretty unsettling, honestly. There are these 4 kids in tubes. Or there's 4 on one side, 4 on the other. And it's pretty unsettling. And, I don't know.
It's about as unsettling as it was in, season 2, because they had that, kids in tubes.
Yeah. But I think again, context matters, because we know these 8 kids are being sent off to essentially be weapons, and they're being trafficked, like we keep saying, like it's not light stuff we're dealing with. These 8 kids are essentially being sent off to die, and we see kids die, like these 8 kids feel a lot more, like their situation's a lot more, horrible because we've seen the 2 kids die in the show already. Like we know these 8 kids are gonna suffer a fate fairly similar to Anna and Otto, which is not a very, it makes it so much worse. Like the context is very important for this show. But, Beatriz, did you have anything to say about this the child hospital set piece at all? Like was there anything that jumped out to you about it?
If anything, I appreciate because sometimes, I don't know, I appreciate the emotional reactions people had to the storyline. The emotional reactions the characters had.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I think in that, like you mentioned before, that's where the darkness and the context lies. Because if they just act unfazed and they're like, okay, we gotta save the kids. Okay, whatever. And then we move on. And we didn't really kind of savor the darkness and the gravity of the situation, then it may be played off as more light. Like it could be kind of like a show like, say, for instance, Steven Universe will say something and it'll be super dark, but they'll move past it because they're like, we still want to keep the lightness of the show, even though there's some dark elements in the background. Whereas with this, it's kind of like, no, we're gonna actually talk about the repercussions of these things. So I appreciate them being in a way more responsible and actually treating this like it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they chose the 2 people that came in here very specifically. Like Black Lightning has an aversion to dead children. Like, I mean, as most people should, but I mean, like, he has personal experience with it and he's very emotional about this. Like, we see him go meet his daughter before he does this mission because he's so wound up about it. And then we see Superboy.
Well, I mean, he didn't go see, I don't think he went to see, he was visiting his daughters and then he gets called by,
yes.
So it wasn't.
But he went to see his daughter because he was wound up about the death in the space.
Right. Like he was,
and I'm just saying it's a continuous character point that he is really worried about children right now. He is really worried that kids are dying and he can't do anything.
And he keeps reminding, he was like, we failed because the kids got away.
Yeah.
So he keeps, yeah, exactly.
And I like that. I like that we have this character here because I feel like he's a very, I don't know, he makes the things feel like they matter more. Because if, like you said, if they just didn't care, they would just be heroes. Like, imagine if this just
It's not necessarily that they didn't care. It's more like if they didn't seem fazed by it, or they kind of just been like much more kind of detached from the situation,
like Dick
at least emotionally.
Like Dick is in episode 3. Like, he says, we did it. We stopped them. We stopped them from doing more. And Black Lightning jumps in and says, no, we didn't. 8 kids got out. Like, that is, I think that's what he adds that. Because Dick, if this just ended on Dick being like, yeah, we did it, it would be a very different tone for how this ended, even if Plasmus died. Even if that all happened.
Yeah. And that's the difference between, say, Young Justice on TV and Young Justice on this app. Yeah. That's the difference. Is that now we actually are forced to have these conversations about the dark themes that are being shown and engaging with them, versus before we could have the darkness but get away with not having to actually engage with it.
Yeah, and again, I think what we're gonna watch with it, what we're gonna have to keep track of on the show is whether that makes the show better at times. Because right now, like Jeff, like you're saying, like there's not a lot of space for humor when we have scenes like Black Lightning going like, I don't want to see dead kids, like, and that's fair. Like that's fair that there's no humor here because that's kind of a different show at that point, and it's a trade-off. And I'm not sure at some point if it's a good trade-off, because I think we do need lighter moments, because this is still a superhero show. This is still a show about not kids anymore, but younger adults trying to deal with these horrible elements in the world, and that's a lot to deal with without having any humor in the show. And so I think that's something to track as we go. As we move on through the scene, we find out about Halo, who comes back to life, which is, I think, pretty interesting. This character, I'm not sure if she has it's unclear if she has, like, some kind of mental disability or not at times, or if she just doesn't understand English. At times it seems like she understands English fine, and sometimes it seems like she doesn't understand English at all. Did either of you get a read on that? Jeff, did you have
It sounds like she's just, suffering from, like, total amnesia.
Okay, that's how you read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I wasn't sure at times, because sometimes, like, it seemed like she just was acting in a strange way, like when she was just hugging the bike and not responding to anything being said to her. Like, it felt a little bit, just different than...
Yeah, I mean, at that time I thought she just didn't speak English. But,
I mean, I thought it was just like a reaction, like, it was her kind of, I thought it was more like shock and like more also like her recovering from coming back to life the first time and her powers awakening, that she's not there. It's not necessarily that she's suffering from something. It's more just because of a reaction of her powers awakening. It's kind of, it could be that. It could be like it takes a little bit of time after dying to, when you come back, it takes a bit of time to get everything, to be stable. And again, it was only like we only see like, it's only a couple hours, not even a day has passed. So it's like, we have to wait and see with her.
Yeah. I'm just interested because I would actually kind of be excited to see, like, that would be another interesting conversation to have about her. Like, cause she's definitely a good person. She is clearly a good person displayed on screen. She's clearly a intelligent person by how she helps the team at multiple times. And I'm just interested where we're going with her, because it feels important that we're introduced to her and Prince Brion in these 3 episodes. Like,
I have a question about Halo. I mean, you say she's a good person, but it wasn't 100% clear whether or not, like, if she opened the door for the assassin voluntarily or not.
That's another good point. And
that's the only thing I'm like, is she though? Or does she just not remember that maybe she was part of like a bad thing? Like, or I don't know.
I think now that you say that, I think that adds to what Jeff was saying, that there might just be amnesia, that maybe prior she was helping the terrorists and now she's dead. She died from the experimentation in the trafficking, and she awakened powers and just forgot everything. And that's now how it's going. And so it might be interesting if we have that might be a character thing that's happening for her, where she remembers who she is. And it'll be interesting to see whether she does a heel turn later in the series, I guess, in the season. But, I think the way I read it was that she was helping them and then they turned on her once she helped them because she was a kid and they wanted to traffic her, which is, I think, a weird choice, but still they did it. That's probably one of the one plot points in this 3 episodes that I found kind of strange. Sorry, Jeff, did I cut you off?
No. I just, imagine if Brion and her were in like a relationship or something and then that came up, that would be an interesting conflict. Like, oh wait, you actually helped kill my parents. That's fun.
I actually could see them doing that. Yeah. That'd be, Yeah, because they like to pair people off in the show, and that'd be a pair they would probably very quickly jump on when they're writing this. But I think the last thing I want to touch on plot-wise that we haven't really talked about yet is the fact that Vertigo is a very major force in these 3 episodes, and I was wondering if you guys felt like this was this show telling us that he's going to be a major force through the entire season or this half of the season, or if you think he's just the villain for these 3 episodes. Beatriz, what were you feeling? Or Jeff, sorry, what were you feeling about that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I feel like he's just like the villain of the week. But his opening line, like, as always, is like, "That's Count Vertigo to you peasants."
Yeah.
You've been 6 years. Can you like come up with some other line? You know?
He has the same thing. I do think though that one of the funniest things in the entire premiere was when he counted the number of people appearing, and I think it was Tigress said like, yeah, that's why he's called Count. Like that was probably the stupidest line of the entire premiere, but I loved it. That's the kind of humor I was kind of expecting from the show, just the shitty like references to pop culture. But Beatrice, how did you feel about Vertigo?
I think he was fine. I mean, he's never been like one of my favorite villains.
Yeah.
I think he just fit with like, because there's such a wide gallery of them. They're like, okay, he fits with like the motivation needed to be part of this opening thing. So, I mean, if I don't see him again, I'm happy. If I see him again in a small role, I'm happy. If I see him in a bigger role, then they don't add more substance to him, then I would be a bit annoyed. But
yeah,
up to this point, I'm like, it's fine. He's fine for being the villain of the week.
Yeah, and I think I'm on the same page with you on that, because like he's not that interesting. He doesn't have a lot of depth. His power is kind of boring too, because it doesn't really lead to interesting fight scenes even, because it's just like he freezes his opponent. So
and can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm also like, I'm currently rereading the Runaways comic, and like he's basically like even not in terms of powers, but in terms of like being a count and wanting his own country and whatever. He's basically Victor Von Doom, but just not as interesting.
That's an interesting point, because we actually got a reference to the person who is in charge of the country he wants to be in charge of in episode 3.
Yeah.
Who it's a reference from a long time ago, because Wally saved what's her, oh my god, the girl who had the heart condition. He saved her and foiled Vertigo's plan, and now that girl is dating Beast Boy, which is an interesting loop of references, but that's what's happening. And like that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where like they throw these weird like crazy deep references at the audience, and they just kind of, if you get it, you get it, if you don't, you don't. And yeah, but yeah, Vertigo, I agree, he's pretty much just Victor Von Doom. After I said all that,
but not as interesting.
But not as interesting at all. He doesn't really have interesting motivations, but he is a stepping stone to get us into seeing more of the light. I would agree that I'd be upset. Like, honestly, I'm upset he's still here in season 3, because he was in the first 2 seasons, and I was bored with him after like the first time I saw him. Like the very first time I saw him, I was bored, and he's been here for almost 3 full seasons now, and I'm just done with him. I'm ready for them to either kill him or just write him off the show, and I would not be upset about that at all. But I think that's like the big hitters. Was there anything we missed, Jeff? Was there anything like we didn't touch on, or little maybe moments you liked that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Okay, so, well, when who was it? Plasma someone?
Plasmus, Otto, whichever one you want to use.
Yeah. Hugs Superboy, like, oh, that was another one of those body horror ones. It's like, I mean, it wasn't gory at all, but still, the concept and passed out from the pain. Okay, so one other thing that I don't know if they quite nailed the characterization I thought they were going for is when Black Lightning, like, at the very end of the scene when he finally gets his act together and starts going after Plasmus, that doesn't seem like something he would have done. Like, I feel like he still would have been a little bit shaken up from the last time he shot lightning at someone who looked like Plasmus.
Yeah. That did feel a little bit quick, but I think that also is, again, part of how, like, they're just moving quick in general. They're just going so fast. And I don't know if I can point at that moment exactly and be like, that's the problem, because there's just so many moments like that are so quick. But again, I'm withholding my opinion until I see what they're doing with Black Lightning in the next couple episodes, just to see how we're doing his character arc. But I agree, it did feel very quick how he just immediately started attacking something that looked like the person he killed. It was very
Well, I mean, he
sudden.
attacked it after he saw a child,
Killed. Yeah.
quote unquote, die. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, oh, like he saw, and in a very graphic way.
Oh, yeah.
So it could have been like, he could stop this person, but then suddenly it's like, oh, wait, but he doesn't, he holds back, and now a child is dead, which again could have pushed him enough against, like, getting his powers back, or at least in a moment of, like, rage and anger. So, I mean, I wouldn't be like, oh, like, it was like an immediate thing. They did do something to give him the incentive.
Yes, they did. I just think that it was just like, it was just quick on screen time wise. I do think that this was the correct way to do it. It's just, I think it was just very sudden. Like, he went from looking at the body to being like, yes, attack. And like, it was just, I don't know. I think it would have been good to see maybe a little bit longer span of that, but I think that it's fine. I think that they needed to move on from this plot line for whatever they're going to do with him in the future. Beatriz, were there any other non-Batwoman things that happened in this episode that really got you excited?
Well, not necessarily excited. I don't know. Are we going to talk about the assassination
I mean, we
sequence,
kind of did already. Did you want to talk about more of that?
But I mean, I just wanted to like point out that they're creating this kind of, they're parallel with like a refugee crisis and discrimination, and a lot of the people who are being discriminated against are coded as being Arab, and it's not great, at least from the start, that they're just immediately doing this whole thing, and they're not, I mean, hopefully we're gonna see more of it, ideally, but if this is the most we see of this refugee crisis and whatever, unlike other things, it wasn't handled well, if this is all we get. Cause, they kind of do this thing where the king, which I appreciate that the new king, where he goes, like, you're being a hypocrite, you're whatever, which was nice. He's like, he calls out, we don't continue this drama of misunderstanding. He kind of like settles everything himself, but I don't know. If we better see more because I don't know. I just think it's also kind of a little damaging that I don't know. I had some issue with that. Especially like, that's just the emotions that I needed to get out.
And I think I get what you're saying, and I think I agree for the most part. I'm hoping that in the future we see, like, it's heavily implied that, Delam was the one who set this all up, that there would be people come in and try to kill, that would assassinate the king and queen. So I hope that we get explanation for this, and it might make it better. Like, we get to see I think it's the Karaki people, we see more of them, because Halo is a Karaki refugee. Like, she is of that group, of the Arab group. Like, she was clearly coded as Muslim, she had she had the head shawl on, and I think that's also a good step forward. Like, this show has always been good about diversity in their cast in terms of, like people, in terms of, like, race, but they kind of stumble on everything else in terms of, representation of people outside of the main cast, so hopefully we get a little more nuance to what's going on here instead of just showing them as terrorists. I agree with that.
Yeah. And I still stand by the fact that, like, if you're gonna use queer themes, you better have queer characters. Like, you can't just, like, have your cake and eat it too. Like, that's not good enough. Like, it's not good enough to have someone like Beast Boy being like, oh, like, I'm the only out person, but then show him be with, like, a girl and be like, oh, everything's fine. It's like, no, you can't. That's not good enough. If you want, I mean, if you're gonna go that route and use these themes, like, if you're not gonna have queer characters, that's just exploiting the queer experience, and that's not good.
And the worst part is, like, I don't think there's anyone in the main cast who we've seen so far who really could be queer, because everyone we've seen has been already pretty much coded as straight. Everyone we've talked to. Like, all the main characters. That's why,
I mean, which is, like, fine. Which is, like, you know, it's like, you want to be a heteronormative show, it's fine, but if you're gonna use queer themes, then you need to back it up and give us representation. You can't have both.
I don't know. Well, like, I would hope that maybe Halo is gay. Maybe this girl is gay and she's not gonna get in with Brion. But I think that's kind of where they're going. But, I think that's, there's just a lot here, and there's a lot coming up. Do you guys, let's end with this. Let's end with something fun, just because we've been talking a lot of dark stuff. Hey Jeff, where do you think we're gonna be going next episode? Do you think we're gonna be going to another 3-episode arc with, like, a cool mission not cool, but a mission dealing with meta trafficking, or do you think we're gonna be doing maybe a little more home building, like we're gonna be seeing more of, like, the actual Justice League the next 3 episodes?
Really couldn't say. I've been kind of unplugged from the whole, because I know, like, there's comic, like, material backing up stuff, and I really haven't read any of it. For example, I didn't know until this podcast recording session that Oracle was Batgirl or Barbara.
Well, in your defense, we are assuming based on other comics that Oracle will be Batgirl. Like that's
she has to be. I mean, it's Barbara Gordon, and like if they change that, that's going to be like a huge deviation from the comics.
But no, because if you either of you read any of the Ender's Game books?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so Jane. Yeah. I thought she was being said to be some sort of Jane character, like an AI that only he can hear.
I mean, there is a lot of similarities to Jane, the way they use Oracle in these episodes, in that like he talks to her and like people don't realize he's talking to somebody else than them in the scene. I guess that's actually a pretty interesting comparison. But I don't know. Usually Oracle is Batgirl after she's been shot by the Joker and loses her use of her legs. So she just is like in the guy at the computer type deal. I
actually do recall reading that. I just didn't have it on my mind at the time. So
no, it's fine. There's so much. Who can keep track of it? Beatriz, is there anywhere you're expecting this show to go, or ways it's going to zag that you're expecting?
I have more faith in them dealing with the humor. I think because this was like the opening 3 episodes, they had a lot of ground to cover in terms of plot and setup. So I think that's why it kind of feels very full. And maybe there's no room for humor, but I think once we get more episodes in, I think we're going to get that back. So I look forward to them dealing with that. Maybe next 3 episodes will give us a bit of a breather. But I don't know, just give me Batwoman saying something, anything. Just anything. Just tell her to say, have her be the one character that curses. That would be fine. It's fine.
Let Batwoman say fuck. Just let her come on screen.
Basically, like, I don't know, I just want her to be, like, with the Bat family doing cool things and whatever. I mean, again, it's fine if it's not, because I understand why there's such a huge array of characters. So I guess maybe something to look forward to is to actually see Oracle, I guess, for me, at least. That's a more feasible thing, more realistic thing, is just show me Oracle being Oracle and being awesome.
Yeah, we could have a scene where Dick goes back to Gotham and meets up with Oracle. That'd be interesting for sure. But
or also have Batman like chastise Dick for being like, dude, like what the hell?
I think we've actually been pretty good this whole series of like avoiding Batman overtaking everything in terms of plot.
Yeah.
Like he did a little bit in season 1 and it made sense, but we've kind of moved on from Batman dictating the entire plot, and I like that because Batman is a little overstated in all the other DC media, and I kind of like him stepping back from all that. But anyways.
Fine. Another realistic thing. Give me more Black Canary.
Okay.
She's their mentor. She needs to be more. She needs to be there. Well, she was there, but I want her with the kids.
I think this speaks to how good the show is, like how good it was in seasons 1 and 2, because when I saw Superboy fighting in these 3 episodes, I immediately thought of Black Canary and thought like, yeah, she's probably really proud of how good he is now. Yeah. Like, that's really good that like I immediately jumped to that I remember that after like 6 or 7 years that, he was really bad at fighting before because he just relied on being strong, and now he's actually good at fighting now. But anyways, this podcast, it was a lot of fun. I'm really excited that Young Justice is back. You guys listening can find all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com before we just...
I just want to... last thing, the end credits of these episodes.
Yes.
I love them.
Yes, they're really good.
Yeah.
And I was...
They remind me of Steven Universe. They're like this very like quiet, just kind of... Not in terms of like Steven Universe has this one image usually, but in kind of like bringing everything back with kind of some soft music and like a heartwarming image, I think is like a really nice touch and brings us back down, I think, from the high intensity.
Yeah, I think they're really good. And for the listeners at home, this is why I was trying to end the episode, because these two just want to keep talking about this show forever.
Sorry.
No,
sorry.
It's good. I know you're not sorry, but that's why. But anyways, it's been a lot of fun. You can find everything about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can join us at Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated.com. /overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Carter, aka Cardboard. And thanks always to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, and Hugh. And I don't know if any plugs you guys have, but we have a Ruby podcast, which is an action animated oriented show if you guys are interested in it. And it's Volume 6 is actually really great compared to the first 5 volumes, but Volume 6 is going strong. And we had Voltron that just finished up. It was about a month ago now, but we have a couple podcasts on that, which are really fun. We're on Steven Universe, if you guys are interested in other shows with serious themes. That's another good one. But, yeah. So, if that's all, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.